Because obviously some companies tried harder than others in giving something back to your mob. Obviously, a lot of the time it is entirely symbolic.
Mm.
But in terms of your experience of that connection of Aboriginal rights and the union movement, what's your experience of that in town?
To this day, Rio Tinto won't agree to the package of compensation that we negotiated with the port through the tonnage. So we get 2 cents a tonne. It's paid into an account for the traditional owners. Rio Tinto refused to participate. A measly 2 cents a tonne. Not as though they're moving multi millions of tonnes in and out of the harbour, but they refused to participate. They used some excuse. I had a not so good relationship with Rio Tinto after I went to a conference in Brisbane one day, and I asked them the question about. I said, "You recognise our mob in up there in the Cape, in Weipa, and other places around Australia?" I said, "You do a lot for them, from what I can understand." I said, "But somewhere between Weipa and when the boat sails down the coast," I said, "you lose the thought processes about Aboriginal people that they no longer exist when you come past Cairns or Townsville." I said, "Why is that?" And they didn't know what to say. And they said, "Oh no, that wouldn't be right." I said, "No, well, it's true." I said, "You have never ever made any attempt to connect with us here in Gladstone." And I said, "I know for a fact that those boats that bring the ore down," I said, "they've got people working on them who are from Cairns, not even from this country, and not even from Weipa, who get a benefit out of what your company does." I said, "But we don't." And even today, there's maybe one young fella who works on the ships. And I think it's only because the MUA has been strongly advocating for some Indigenous employment.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, Rio Tinto to me has never ever been honest and upfront with us about any of their activities here. I mean, Gladstone was one of their biggest investments anywhere around the world. They had 5 different units here, right? They had the power station at QAL, Yarwun, and down there at the smelter. 4 units here operating in Gladstone. They had never had anywhere else in the world at that time. They never had any others.
So some of the newer companies, it's like QGL, I think it's called, Queensland Gas, Santos, Origin. Is it any better with those companies? Or?
Collectively liars. Collectively liars. On the construction, we negotiated an ILUA, an Indigenous Land Use Agreement, and we were promised 300 jobs for our sign-off, right? And we thought, well, 300 jobs to our mob, that's quite a few $1 million in the pockets of our people. And I think at best we might have got 3 or 4 individuals. A lot of Maoris, a lot of people from other parts of the country may have got jobs, but none of our people did. They never took that extra step they needed to prepare our people for jobs over there. I was down the valley one day at my favourite cafe having a coffee, and this old bloke was standing over at the counter, and he's all dressed up in the PPI,
PPI?
And yeah, that safety gear.
All right.
The yellow shirt and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, he was talking loud and carrying on, and I just happened to be standing beside him, and I said, "What's wrong, mate?" He said, he said, "They sacked me." I said, "Who sacked you?" He said, "Over the island." He said, "They were complaining." He was working over the island with one of the contractors, and they'd sacked him because he wasn't doing it. "What did they sack you for?" He said, wasn't doing my job properly. The boys in the shed were complaining. This is the people you work with, instead of someone in a position of sort of authority saying, "Listen, you better lift your game," blah blah blah. they just complained and complained and complained till they got rid of him. So they got rid of him, and I said, and I looked at this bloke and I said, man, he looks like he's got a bit of age on him. And I must have been close to 60 at the time, so yeah, go back 6 years or so, yeah. And I said, how old are you, mate? And he said, I'm 72. And I said, how did you get a job over there? Oh, you know, knew this one, and blah, 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 and he got a job. And I said, my daughter was working for Bechtel as Aboriginal Indigenous recruitment. And I said to her one day, oh, you think I should chase a job over there as a Peggy or something? She said, oh, Dad, you got to be fairly young to do that sort of work. I said, yeah, true. Anyway, I was out at the footy on this particular Friday night, and the place was packed. I think it was some sort of a rep game on, so there was plenty of people there. And I'm sitting in front of this Maori guy who's sitting a couple of rows behind me, and he's talking on the phone. Everyone can hear what he's saying. And he's saying to this guy, and I picked up during the conversation, this guy was in Auckland, preparing to get on an aeroplane to come to Brisbane, and then to Gladstone to take a job on the island. And he said, oh, don't worry about tickets or anything, we'll fix it up when you get here. What I took that to say was that he didn't have any classification as a scaffolder, well, most of them are scaffolders, a rigger or a dogman or any of that sort of stuff. He was coming here on this guy. This guy was a supervisor, I learned later on. He had it within his power to employ this guy. There must have been a crew of them. Could have been 3, maybe 4 of these young fellas that were coming over from the Shaky Isles.
The Shaky Isles is New Zealand.
New Zealand. And they were taking jobs out of the 300 that were promised to Aboriginal people, right? Instead of them taking our young people on, training them up, they were bringing them from overseas. And unbelievable. And yet when they were challenged about it, Bechtel and those companies like the Santosses and the others that were there, APL&G, they denied it. And so we're on a hiding to nothing, you know. So yeah, collectively liars, and you wouldn't want to deal with them again. And I found since that they're the same. Even the crews that they have here working in Gladstone, they're all, in our language we call them Dungabullum, which means they find it hard to tell the truth. So they do all the other things right, like Australian society has treated us over the years. The face-to-face stuff is, can't do enough for you, but when it comes down to doing something, they just don't do it.
So that all comes back on the elders, you know, like when you got no work, even the ones that have quite a good background in on to work out there or in the office, they put 1 or 2. As Richard said, they're Dunga. They're really. It never did us any good, you know, because we got then the young fellas will go, they all might as well be drinking and on drugs. Well, that all comes back on us as elders, you know, and of course they want money, and but you know, life goes on. So well, you know, well, I look at this. You said many Maoris in town. It was like it was New Zealand. And you know, they took a lot of those jobs that our mob could have had. Yeah, yes, you know, just TAs. When on QAL they had TA jobs out there. I think they were more employed on QAL back in the 60s.
No, there wasn't a lot of Maoris there in those days.
No, there's no not Maoris, but for the Murrays, there was a lot of Murrays there.
Yeah, a lot of black fellas.
Yeah.
Got jobs and come from all over the place. And we didn't mind that. That was good because they were black fellas who were providing for their families, and that was good.
A lot of locals were employed there because I know Richard was out there. Lindsay, Wally was like the foreman rigger in those days, or Evans Deacon.
Anyway,
but it was different here.
But even today, that sort of spirit hasn't lifted off this place. There's still that attitude within the society in Gladstone. Doesn't matter whether you're part of Rotary or whether you're part of the any of those sorts of service clubs, there's all a, you know, there's a, how would you say it? It's like a make-believe. It's a screen, a smoke screen, for the reality underneath is that they're in there getting the goal for themselves. They don't want to share it with anybody, and they'll cut each other's throats as well. So there's no trust among them, and so well, we even go through the same experience today that as even before QAL started, like there was always a question about who you knew, not what you knew. And Gladstone's renowned for that. But if Gladstone wasn't here, we'd still be here. If Gladstone had been just a speck in someone's imagination, we would have still been here, because this is our land. We belong to the land.
That's all really. And it's not all about money. As long as we can survive, you know, that's what I always say. We're just surviving, but we're happy. We're surviving. We know who we are, and that was the main thing. Was when you talk about Dad and Mum, and they made us the people who we are today, and you just have to get on with life, you know, because we're not here forever. We're just to make a difference where we are, and but we just hope and pray that our kids can do something that's worthwhile, and that's usually in a job, and it's very hard, because you get people holding them back from your own society, from your own mob.
When the project was announced by the government that they're going to build these things over here, there was that many different RTAs were showing up on the doorstep wanting to do training, and you know, if you want to get trained to fly to the moon, you could have done back in those days. There was that many, and they can do anything. This is their spiel was, whatever training you want us to do, we can do. Blah blah blah, and so there was a number of ex sportsmen, NRL people, state of origin players, who came into town here. There was we counted 21 of them here at one time, all trying to get into the marketplace, and so unless you had a relationship with those sorts of blokes, you weren't going to get anywhere. So our local community organisation, GEGA, no one wanted to talk to us. The gas companies didn't want to talk to us. We couldn't do anything for them, but they could do a lot for us, and we just sunk into the background for about 7-8 years, and we're just starting to emerge today again. But one of the things that disturbed me and disappointed me was the fact that when Bechtel left here after that project, they left with $20 billion that they never had to spend. That's not counting the profit that they made. 20 billion. The project was worth, they said, something like 80 to 100 billion. That was the expected costs. They done it under time and under budget. 20 billion they walked away with. They leave anything behind? The port might have got a bit out of it. The port had them on renting all that land out there that we see with all the dongas and everything on it, different places. But
we got one donga.
Yeah, we got one donga. We got that just this year.
Oh.
Yeah. Had to pay $800 to get it from Gladstone to Calliope. So these are the things that we're still going through, and this is the smoke and mirrors that community groups use to hide the reality that's there. So young people go through our education system, which has failed. They take our kids from primary school to middle school, they call it now, and into high school, and any issues that the kid has from prep right through to grade 12 goes on their record. So days off, whether they've been suspended, any behaviour that's not becoming, all those sorts, whether you've been excluded, all those sorts of things. The employers in Gladstone say, oh, can we have their record when they're looking to apply for a traineeship or something? They go for, oh, he's had 85 days off in 4 years of high school. He's gone. So all they're taking is the perfect people, the people who don't have wrinkles, the people who who don't have a limp. They're looking at all these things and judging their character by these things that really don't matter. There might be a lot of good reasons why a person had 85 days off in 5 years of high school. But they don't want to know about that. They want the perfect people. I've been to a lot of the high school awards nights where I see, and I respect the fact that some kids are doing really well at school. When I was there one year, one young girl went across there 7 times to accept awards. I thought, that's great. But I know that there's another 100, 200 kids out there who will never reach that level. What are you doing for them? So they say you measure a society by how well they look after their infirm or those sorts of people. In Gladstone, they don't do that. In Gladstone's about picking the winners and pushing them all the way. You know what the winners do? The winners get a good education, a good job. They go, they never come back. We got that in Aboriginal society. We got 5 young people went away and became doctors. Not one of them has come back to Gladstone to share their skills with their mob. Not one of them. That disappoints me immensely. So that says that the colonial impact and what the colonists were attempting to do is they've achieved it. They've taken those young minds and remodeled them to the way of the European. Yeah, the law of the jungle. Only the strong survive. So my dad wouldn't have liked that, because he treated you as his equal, and that's one of the things that I try to do. But and the other side of the coin is that when I see that inequality, I say things, or write things. I could be like poor old Israel Folau and get thrown out of the system.
You lose your 4 million.
Yeah, so Gladstone's got a long way to go yet, but I still believe that we have the right size community and some good people in this community who will make the change. They'll live that change. They say if you're going to see change, you've got to be the change, and I think we've got the right people in Gladstone to do it.
So what's next? I mean, what's interesting is coming back here is how dead, the town's a bit dead after this boom. And, obviously there needs to be an alternative to the whole boom and bust model of fly in, fly out new industries. What do you see in the future?
Tourism, that's for blackfellas. That's where we're going to find our future. And tourism means a whole lot of things. So it means looking after our environment. So the big reef out here, it's a big part of it. So before the reef can be well, the land's got to be well. So we're going to help the land to recover. And how we do that is by using methods that our miners and pastoralists have got to use different ways and means of making a dollar. Like Julie was saying before, you only need just enough to live. You don't have to have every bank account filled to the brim to overflowing, and they don't want to share it either.
Yeah. Live simply, like the tiny homes we're talking about. We should.
Who was talking about tiny homes?
I was looking. We were talking about tiny homes. Well, we had tiny homes in the past, eh? We all lived in that one little tiny home.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about putting tiny homes on that project out of that
that'd be good,
property.
Rich, yeah.
So can you say, because I don't know anything about that property you got out
Billabong,
there.
yeah, well, we've got it
Can you
out there.
say
Is anyone
something
there
about
at the moment?
Got it in the days of ATSIC. So ATSIC was in John Howard's Dreamtime. It wasn't our part of our dreaming. It was part of the Dreamtime from John Howard. So they had a program operating for land. What are they called? Land. So if you wanted to buy land and there was a property available, you could apply to the department, and they'd do all the things. And if the seller was agreeable, then he'd get the price he was asking for, and you'd get the land. And that's what happened.
And the title is freehold title, or is it a collective title, or?
Freehold.
Yeah.
Freehold, owned by our corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're currently controlling it. It's 420 acres of what was once a cattle property. Oh, excuse me, I think it was a lot bigger then in those days, because we got 21 neighbours. Around our perimeter, and they're all small landholders. Oh, there's a couple of bigger ones, but most of them are all small, 10 or 20 acres. And so what we wanted it to do was to somewhere close to town where, to take family groups and educational groups and take them out there and give them an experience, do some cultural awareness stuff, and do some camping and all that sort of stuff, And so we still haven't settled on a full development plan or community plan for the property, but we are going to start working in the area of tourism. So it'll become a base whereby we can access the Boyne Valley. So the Boyne Valley in itself offers up a whole range of different experiences, and we can be part of all those experiences just by using Aboriginal culture as one of the parts of it. So there's lots of Aboriginal cultural sites and materials that are there, and so hopefully we can use a bit of technology. At the moment we're working on using some drones in order to get us places where we wouldn't necessarily get access to, and a part of that will be in 1770 as well. 1770 is basically untouched by the world, and the doors are opening there for us, and that's why I'm pushing for our mob to get down there this month, to show their faces and their experiences, and then we'll grow from there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons we're going to use the drones is for in the Gladstone Harbour here. We're going to do a virtual reality look at Gladstone Harbour and the precinct.
Mm-hmm.
So what that'll do is with this technology, he can go in and take South Trees Island and QAL and remove it completely and put trees and whatever else back in its place. So we can start talking about the type of animals and the people and the landscape that was there prior to those sorts of things. So our harbour will become like a virtual reality of what it was. And we could even have boys launching the boats from here, going out there and hunting for turtle or dugong or king salmon, like old man used to do up here. We could have him putting back on the rocks up here and fishing for salmon. And so that's just a start. With technology is probably, having talked to a few of my grandsons, I've got 7 grandsons, and they're not really interested in working on those big plants, those construction jobs. They're more interested in getting out in the bush, identifying the birds and the plants and trees and all those sorts of things, and cleaning up where there's maybe some weeds and infestations of noxious weeds and that sort of stuff, and feral animals, that sort of stuff, hunting them.
And we've got a big billabong there with the pink lotus lily there, and I know the pink lotus is food stuff. It can be, most parts of it can be used and eaten and cooked with, and I guess we look to a lot of Asian people who use it already, and I think we haven't really taken opportunities that be there because we've got the product there, and even into into seasons, the good seasons, we could be selling those pods and things like that. I know you can even eat the seeds and the stems and the roots. So there's things just waiting for us, and this, as Richard says, you can build the program. Using the
Just a matter of getting our hands on some money.
yeah, money is a big thing, and it's hard
And,
to get.
And I don't think we're going to get it out of the gas companies. They've already given a majority of their money to other group, and but we'll work in ways of getting around that.
But we're getting old. Oh, I'm older than Richard, but we still have to keep thinking. We still have to think about the future for all our children, like with the grandchildren and grandsons and daughters, and give them something to aspire to. And I know they're watching us all the time, and I think sometimes they think, oh well, but they have to be strong. They can't let anything take over, when they've got something to aspire to and look at us. So we could say, like Dad has led the way for us, so we can be leading the way for our children and their children, because we're great grandparents, and so we know there's something out there, and we don't want to be wasting time, because time is precious.
But back in the day when Dad was probably a young man, he was more into sports. I can remember him saying he didn't start drinking or smoking until he was probably late 20s, 30s, something like that, maybe even later. And but today there's bigger challenges. Ice is rampant in our community, Gladstone. Anybody under 40 in Gladstone, they've probably been on ice sometime. And it's not fair to a lot of people who haven't been on that thing, but it's destroying our community, and so much so that we got black people who are of the people of this land who are cooking this stuff and selling it off to other people, basically poison, murdering them, and they just can't see the wrong in what they're doing, and the police don't seem to care. You can kill yourselves, we don't care if you're murdering
that's
yourself,
probably
one another.
part of it. Yeah, they don't care.
So there's some big challenges.
And to me, there's a difference between black fellas and white fellas, and we live simply. We live simple. And there's a lot of white fellas that live simple too, but they want things worth a lot of money. You go and get a lounge at the second-hand shop or over classifieds, and then they'll buy a big allowance worth $2,000 and $3,000 for leather, And so I suppose, as we say, money makes the world go round, but they live too up here and we're down there still, and we're quite happy because we've never known that other side. So start living more simple, get rid of all your big homes and all your cars, and use trips overseas, but you can still keep flying. Come on over to see us. But there's so much that can be thrown away. It's a throwaway society, and when they talk about Japan and all those places, they're making these things and they're throwing so much out into the water, and the plastic bags. And I said, look, I always say when I'm doing cultural awareness, I said, when a white fella came to Australia, there was not one plastic bag, no pollution, not one. We lived simple.